Jesus didn't come to be worshipped. He came to show you how to become what he became. If that line rattles you, good. This isn't an attack on faith, it's an initiation. Thoth's forbidden account paints a different Jesus, not a flawless savior dropped from the sky, but a disciplined seeker who trained in temples and monasteries, mastered breath and silence, and proved what consciousness can do. If that's true, the edits, councils, and culture that told you to kneel and wait left out the map. Tonight we'll open it. The missing years, the soul's long preparation, the teachings that were trimmed for obedience, the crucifixion reframed as a demonstration, and the living method called Christ consciousness. You don't have to agree, you only have to look. Because if Jesus was modeling a path, not monopolizing a title, then the question isn't whether you're worthy, it's whether you're willing. Jesus disappeared from the official story exactly when a seeker is forged. Not in a palace, but in practice. According to Thoth's account and streams of esoteric tradition, those missing years were anything but empty. Imagine a young man traveling under moonlit caravans and riverboats, Alexandrian docks at dawn, ink-stained fingers in temple libraries, desert air cooling the limestone of Kemet's halls. In Egypt, under keepers of Thoth's sciences, training began with what looks unimpressive to the untrained eye. Breath before words, stillness before doctrine, service before status. Hekau, the disciplined use of sound, wasn't stage magic. It was pressure on the lattice of reality, applied through a quiet mind. Geometry wasn't a school subject. It was a map for how consciousness stabilizes form. Fasting sharpened perception, not to punish the body, but to sensitize it. Night vigils beneath a sky bright enough to read by taught a deeper listening, the kind where instruction arrives without a voice. Elders didn't flatter, they tested. They watched for humility, for the willingness to begin again when ego begged for a title, for hands that would clean the floor with the same attention they'd later place on a fevered brow. This is how a vessel is readied. Nervous system steadied, attention trained, motives purified, speech aligned with reality rather than performance. The boy they met could feel, the man they sent on could carry. Some of what we're sharing here can't be spoken on YouTube without getting clipped. Join our free newsletter at the link in the description, enter your email to get the uncut transmissions, and, for a limited time, you'll also receive our book as a free ebook copy, not a reward. From Nile reeds and lamplit scrolls, the trail turns east. In ashrams and hermitages, he would have been the student no one noticed, the one who arrived before dawn and left after the floor was swept. India taught the grammar of inner wind, pranayama to steer the breath like a river through the canyons of the mind, dhyana to sit until thought unhooks, mantra to hold attention like a tone that doesn't waver in a storm. There he learned that the body is an instrument, not an obstacle, that hands can become steady lamps, that breath can shift the weather inside the chest before words ever try. Tibet trained weather of another sort, thin air, long roads, red-robed dawns, the practice of compassion as heat in winter, the discipline of seeing every stranger as a familiar face you've forgotten. Prayer wheels blur, bells answer wind, and the lesson lands in bones. Endurance is its own intelligence. You don't carry light by wishing. You carry it by refusing to set it down when no one is watching. None of this reads like spectacle because it isn't. It is craft. What would a day have looked like? Before sunrise, breath and silence, a single line of teaching held until it becomes felt. Work with the body, walking meditation along a riverbank, ordinary tasks done slowly enough to stay aware. Study, not to collect facts, but to refine questions until they cut. Service, clean the hall, tend the sick. Listen long enough that a man who talks too much finally says the thing he's scared to say. Night, a forgiveness inventory. The day released, chant until sleep. Repeat. Years pass. Muscles of attention grow the way calluses do, quietly, inevitably, through use. He learned to bless food by being entirely with it. He learned to read a face beneath the armor it wears. He learned to step into a room without adding noise. He learned to touch without taking. And the small healings that followed, fever easing, breath evening, panic settling, were not violations of nature, but collaborations with it. According to these lineages, miracles are side effects of a simple sequence followed fiercely. Presence, truth, love, service. Presence to see what is without spinning. Truth to name it without flinching. Love to hold it without defense. Service to act without vanity. Repeat that and the room changes. Repeat it for years and the town talks. Repeat it for a lifetime and history writes songs. This is why the tales that survive are oddly consistent across distant traditions. The one who has become simple has become powerful. The one who stops performing becomes a clear channel. The one who can sit with suffering without trying to look holy is the one who quietly helps. The missing years matter because they take Jesus off the unreachable pedestal and place a path in your hands. If he trained, then training is permitted. If he learned, then learning is holy. If he refined, then refinement is the work. The world told you to wait for power to descend. Thoth's record points toward power cultivated, tested, and trusted. That is why the earliest followers called it a way before it ever became a religion. A way has steps. A way can be walked. And a way can be taught without owning anyone's soul. If training made the man, the next question is sharper still. What prepared the soul? What prepares a soul to carry that much light without burning up? Training shapes the vessel. Time shapes the flame. In Thoth's telling and in strands of mystic tradition from Egypt to India, the being you met as Jesus didn't arrive as a one-off miracle. He arrived as the latest chapter of a long apprenticeship across lifetimes. The idea offends the tidy version of the story, but it makes the lived one make sense. Character isn't downloaded, it's distilled. Karma isn't punishment, it's curriculum. Each life gives you the next lesson you actually need, not the one you would prefer. Presented as scandal, reincarnation functions as accountability. You inherit the work you didn't finish and the gifts you did. You've heard the names as myth. Thoth hands them back as milestones. Adam, no cartoon culprit in a garden, but the archetype of first consciousness tasting choice, learns that raw power without awareness scatters, and that naming has consequences. Speak carelessly and you vandalize your own world. Speak cleanly and reality coheres around your word. Enoch, no riddle in a family tree, but the walker practices moving in step with the unseen until walking with God is no longer poetry but method. Where others tried to storm heaven with ladders of pride, he ascended by patience and alignment. No theft, just permission. Melchizedek, priest-king without pedigree, embodies a sovereignty that blesses without extracting. He brings bread and wine, not tribute and threat. He reminds power what power is for. In Thoth's account, these are not unrelated tales. They're rungs, speech that builds, movement with the invisible that doesn't abandon the visible, authority that serves rather than feeds. And then, the fourth life wears a familiar name. Seen through this lens, Jesus arrives not to erase the human story, but to complete a long chapter of it. He is the student who did the homework across centuries, learning what speech can do and what it must never do, learning how to move in the subtle without evading the plain, learning how to sit in power without needing anyone to kneel. That continuity dignifies the human path. It says the Christ is not a lightning strike that hits one man and leaves the rest in the dark. It is a current any soul can learn to conduct if it is willing to be cleared, steadied, and put to service. The miracles stop looking like violations of nature and start looking like collaborations with it from a higher octave. Breath and attention applied with precision. Love used as a real force. Truth spoken as an instrument rather than a performance. If reincarnation sounds foreign, try this picture. Memory deeper than the brain. A momentum of consciousness that survives the body the way a melody survives instruments. Actions carve grooves. Grooves become tendencies. Tendencies become character. You already know this within one lifetime. Thoth simply extends the arc across many. In that long classroom, karma does not keep score to humiliate you. It routes you toward the exact situations that polish what's rough and soften what's hard. Spend a life weaponizing speech and you will meet a season where your own words return to teach you. Spend a life hiding your strength and you will meet a season that demands you stand or lose what matters. Mercy in this model is not the cancellation of consequence. It is the offer of context and another chance to choose. Read the lineage literally or read it as a teaching diagram. Either way, the instruction stands. Consciousness refines. It tries strength without love and learns the cost. It tries love without strength and learns the leak. It experiments with silence and discovers silence is not absence but bandwidth. It learns to apologize without self-erasure, to forgive without amnesia, to tell the truth without showmanship. It learns to hold attention on a wound long enough that the wound stops flinching from the needle. It learns to carry power the way a medic carries a blade, with purpose, not theater. Given enough practice, compassion becomes stable heat, attention becomes steady light, service becomes a habit rather than a stunt. Think of it this way. If the missing years taught Jesus how to work, the lifetimes taught him why to work. Adam trains humility before the raw force of naming. Enoch trains intimacy with the invisible without aggression. Melchizedek trains stewardship that does not extract. Bring those threads into one person and you meet someone who can place a hand on a fever and on a tyrant's fear, who can read a law and also read the heart behind the letter, who can ask for water at a well and also give someone their dignity back. The continuity matters because it changes what you hear when he says, "And follow me." It isn't an invitation to admire, it's an invitation to apprentice. You can also feel why this version threatens institutions. A once-ever exception keeps you dependent. A repeatable path requires you to stand. A savior frozen on a pedestal belongs to them. A method moving in your chest belongs to you. Stories of preparation empower disciples. Stories of exception empower gatekeepers. When you erase the rungs, the ladder looks impossible. When you restore them, the climb becomes demanding but fair. And fairness is dangerous to any structure that sells access. So take the lineage as you will, literally, symbolically, or somewhere honest in between. What matters is the spine it offers your own journey. You are not starting from zero. The habits you can't explain, the skills you learn too quickly, the empathy that rises for no obvious reason, these may be fingerprints of work your soul has already done. Treat this life like the next rung. Refine your speech until it heals more than it harms. Train your power until it serves more than it shows. Grow your love until it tells the truth. If the soul that stood in Galilee had been preparing for ages, that doesn't make you small. It makes the path patient. And if that path restores agency, you can guess what happened next. The red pen came out. When a path threatens a business model, the path gets edited. You can feel the splice marks if you read with your hands. Places where a living method turns into a museum piece. Places where an invitation becomes a command. After the lineage of preparation and the years of training, the next move was predictable. Turn a repeatable practice into a once-ever exception. A Jesus you can imitate destabilizes gatekeepers. A Jesus you can only admire secures them. So the red pen went to work. The early currents were messy and alive. Communities shared sayings that pointed inward. The kingdom is within. Split wood and I am there. Lines that collapse distance between you and the divine. Teachings about cycles of return and the justice of consequence circulated not as gossip, but as guidance. If consciousness refines across lifetimes, then today matters because tomorrow is made of it. But as small circles grew into institutions, incentives changed. Salvation became a product. Intermediaries built careers as translators of mystery. Administration needed uniformity. And what had been a way began to harden into a brand. Councils did what councils are built to do. Choose a center, fix boundaries, standardize supply. Some texts became canon, others became rumor. Certain flavors of Jesus survived, official, tidy, useful to power. Other flavors went underground, demanding interior, useful to freedom. You don't need to demonize the men in the room to name the economics in the room. A faith that can be centrally managed needs fewer wild cards. A practice that turns ordinary people into living temples needs a lot of them. Listen to the edits in the way behavior is rewarded. Worship grows, practice shrinks. Obedience is spotlighted, inner work is footnoted. The dramatic becomes doctrine, the daily becomes decoration, and where the text still leaks light, commentary is used as caulk. Believe and be saved. Translation, lean on us. Do not question mystery. Translation, leave the tools in the box. Uniformity is unity. Translation, don't test this for yourself. You can love the church and still notice how advice like this creates dependency. What got trimmed? Anything that collapses distance. Reincarnation reframed salvation as a long apprenticeship, hard to sell urgency when time is generous. Karma reframed punishment as pedagogy, hard to market absolution when consequence can teach. The divine spark reframed holiness as universal, hard to monopolize grace when every chest carries a pilot light. And the method, attention, truth, love, service reframed miracles as side effects of alignment, hard to license a process anyone can learn. What got amplified? The singular exception, divine birth as exclusive franchise, sacrifice as debt settlement rather than demonstration, authority as concrete hierarchy instead of competence and character, heaven as later instead of present. The result is subtle but huge. Your gaze is lifted off your hands and fixed on the stage. You stop asking, "How do I become?" and start asking, "How do I belong?" None of this requires a villain's mustache, only ordinary organizational gravity. Institutions centralize, standardize, and scale. That is what they do. But scaling mystery is like bottling wind. If you don't teach people to breathe, you end up selling air. The safest way to protect a brand is to turn a path into a spectacle. The fastest way to end a revolution is to make it respectable. Still, the seams show. In the quiet verses that survived the pruning, you can hear the earlier music. The inner room, the secret prayer, the field discovered in a heart, the treasure recognized and sold for with joy. You hear a teacher pointing away from himself and toward practice. Forgive. Tell the truth, give in secret, keep the lamp filled. Avoid theater when you pray. You hear his allergy to performance and his refusal to trade authority for applause. You hear, most dangerously for any institution, his insistence that the door is inside you. If you accept that the record was curated, the question stops being, "Was there an edit?" and becomes, "What did the edit incentivize?" Dependence over discipleship, access over apprenticeship, spectacle over service. That lens doesn't ask you to hate anything. It asks you to stop outsourcing what was handed to you. If what was cut collapses distance, restore it. If what was amplified inflates distance, deflate it. If commentary blocks a doorway, step around it, bow to the building if you must, and walk the way anyway. This is why the red pen matters. It didn't merely change a book. It changed a posture. It taught you to wait outside a door that is inside your ribcage. It persuaded you to argue about maps while forgetting your feet. It trained you to defend the reputation of a man whose whole life defended your possibility. Restore the cut pieces and the story changes key. From dependency to practice, from spectacle to method, from later to now. Which is exactly where the next reframing lives, the act everyone thinks they understand until they look with different eyes. The Crucifixion reads differently when you stop treating it like a debt ledger and start reading it like a field manual. In the sanctioned version, a flawless being absorbs your bill so you can go on with business as usual. In the initiatory version, a trained consciousness walks into the darkest room on purpose and shows you what mastery looks like under maximum pressure. Not appeasement, embodiment, not transaction, transformation. A passage demonstrated in public so no one can claim the path was impossible for humans to walk. Watch the sequence. Presence first. In the garden, he does not bypass fear. He names it and breathes with it until panic loses the steering. Wheel. Truth next. He will not perform holiness by pretending the cup is light. He speaks honestly and still chooses the line that serves. Love, even on the beam. Forgive them. The nerve to keep the heart open precisely where most of us slam it shut. Service to the last breath, returning every ounce of pain as clarity rather than contagion. This is the method you've been shown in motion, presence, truth, love, service, held under conditions designed to break it. It doesn't break. We were taught to stare at the nails. The teaching points at the breath. A body can be pinned, awareness cannot. The point is not pain. The point is what consciousness can do with pain when it is trained. Feel it without fusing with it. Let it move through without handing it on. Convert terror into trust even when nothing in the scene improves. Into your hands I commit my spirit is not capitulation. It is the final muscle memory of a lifetime of letting go. It is an exit practiced so many times in life that the same gesture is available in death. To release, to return, to rest in what holds you. The tomb then is not a magician's prop. It is silence scored into stone so the smallest sound can be heard. Before any story about angels or folded cloths, there is a breath. Before the breath, a willingness to rest in what every ego calls annihilation. In this frame, resurrection is not an exception granted to a favorite. It is the predictable consequence of an identity no longer welded to a body. Death becomes a door you can walk through consciously, not a trap you fall into by surprise. The demonstration is not watch me so you never have to. It is watch me so you know how to. If consciousness is primary, it outlives the costume. If love has been trained to remain open, it does not shut when the room goes dark. If attention has been steadied, it does not drown when the body stops moving. None of this makes suffering cute. The point was never to romanticize pain or to instruct you to accept injustice. The point is to show you where your leverage actually is when the world can't be changed by noon. In your attention, your honesty, your refusal to close, your choice to return harm as wisdom. That is how cycles end. That is how karma stops multiplying. You cannot always spare your body. You can spare the world your unexamined revenge. You cannot guarantee safety. You can guarantee that fear will not be your final authority. Read the scene again without the contract language. A state of consciousness is being exhibited under stress so you can calibrate your own. A lamp is being held steady in wind so you can see the size of your own flame. The miracle here is not a bypass of biology. It is coherence that outlasts biology's change. If that is what was shown, then the call is not admire the spectacle. It is train until you can do in small what he did in large. You will likely never face a cross. You will face betrayal, misunderstanding, and days when help does not arrive. You will face the temptation to harden, to lie, to pass your pain onward. Those are your beams. Your breath is still the tool. This reframing also returns justice to the story. If all that was needed was a payment, you are a spectator. If what was given was a pattern, you are an apprentice. Spectators argue about details of the scene. Apprentices practice until the scene makes sense from the inside. Spectators borrow certainty, apprentices build it. One posture waits for rescue, the other becomes useful. One leaves you defending a doctrine, the other leaves you feeding the hungry, telling the truth, forgiving before the bruise has faded. You can feel why power preferred the account where everything important happens on a stage once. For you, but never in you. A public, repeatable method cannot be taxed, titled, or trademarked. It can only be lived. And once a few people begin living it, it spreads the quiet way. All good things spread through example rather than enforcement. That is more threatening to any empire than any slogan. If the crucifixion is demonstration, death is a door, not a dungeon, then the next honest question is practical. How do you train for that kind of coherence in a normal life? What do you do tomorrow morning that makes you a little more steady, a little more truthful, a little more loving, a little more useful when pressure arrives? That's where the method named Christ consciousness stops being poetry and becomes practice. Christ consciousness stops being a slogan the moment you practice it under small pressure. You don't need incense or Latin. You need attention you can steer, truth you can bear, love you can keep open, and a habit of service that survives bad moods. If the crucifixion is the public exam, this is the quiet training. How you sit, how you breathe, how you speak, how you treat the person in front of you when no one is filming. The method is simple, not easy, and it repeats until it becomes muscle memory you can trust when things go wrong. Presence is the art of staying with what is instead of bolting. Begin before the world wakes. Sit somewhere plain. Feel the breath come in like a tide and leave like a tide, and keep your attention on that small doorway until your mind realizes there is nowhere else to run. When thoughts parade, bow without following. When feeling tightens, widen the frame. Every return to the breath is a rep. Every rep thickens the fibers that keep you steady later when someone pokes the bruise you've been dodging. Presence won't make life easy. It makes you available. It teaches the body to remain in truth long enough to answer reality rather than attack it. Truth is the refusal to varnish. It isn't cruelty and it isn't theater. It's the clean line that brings your inner and outer life into agreement. Your body already knows the difference. When you say yes and mean no, the chest contracts. When you pretend, the jaw tenses. Practice small honesty until your mouth can carry bigger honesty without shaking. Say, I don't know, when you don't. Admit, I was unkind when you were. Name, I'm afraid when you are. Truth is the broom that keeps the temple from filling with dust. It clears the floor so love has a place to sit. Love is not a mood. It's a decision to keep the heart open when it would be easier to close. You train it in unglamorous moments, untying knots you tied yesterday, refusing to make a stranger pay for an old wound, looking past the bark of someone brittle enough to snap. Compassion doesn't mean tolerating harm. It means you stop rehearsing the scene where you win and they lose. It means limits without hatred. It means remembering the person in front of you is carrying something heavy, even if they carry it badly. Love isn't soft. It's strong enough to stay. Strong enough to say no without turning the other into an enemy. Strong enough to forgive without editing history. Service is love with feet on. Do the useful thing before the visible thing. Take the smaller slice without a speech about it. Carry a bag. Answer the message. Clean the spill. Apologize first. Give the credit away. Make the call you've delayed because you're embarrassed. Service is not self-erasure. It's self-forgetting long enough to help. It cuts grooves in you that joy can run along later. It also reveals where vanity still calls the shots, because nothing exposes ego faster than work that earns no applause. Wrap these four together and you get coherence, and coherence changes rooms. Stand in a queue with your attention soft, your jaw unclenched, your heart unarmored, and notice what happens. Voices lower. Strangers breathe easier. Children stop scanning for weather. None of this is mystical. Humans regulate one another all day without naming it. The method works because reality is relational and your state is contagious. You felt this from others. You can become it for others. When enough people carry this steadiness, a street feels different. When a few homes carry it, a neighborhood remembers how to be kind. If you want something to do for the next 7 days, keep it embarrassingly small and ruthlessly consistent. Rise 10 minutes earlier than you'd like and sit with your breath. Choose one conversation where you'll tell the clean truth you've been postponing. Offer one act of help that cannot be traced back to your name. Keep a short forgiveness inventory at night and release the day before sleep turns it to compost for nightmares. Read a paragraph that feeds your courage. Touch a tree. Drink water without your phone in your hand. Repeat. You won't feel holy. You'll feel ordinary and slightly inconvenienced. Perfect. The point isn't sensation, the point is direction. Practice won't spare you from hard days, it will spare you from becoming hard on hard days. You will still get it wrong. You will still raise your voice, sulk, avoid, perform. The point is not never falling. The point is shortening the time between the fall and the return. The more quickly you return, the less noise there is between the moment life happens and the moment you answer it with something worthy of the breath you were given. The fruit of this method isn't a halo. It's usefulness. People feel safe around you. Rooms stop bracing when you enter. Your presence starts paying quiet bills no poster can advertise. Call it Christ consciousness if that phrase serves you. Call it coherence if it doesn't. The name isn't the point. The practice is. What matters is the stubborn, quiet willingness to become a place where love can move without tripping over your ego. What matters is choosing habits that make that more likely tomorrow than it was today. What matters is living the sermon instead of arguing about where the pulpit should go. And if this is not a myth but a method, if it's something ordinary lives can carry, then stop waiting for permission. Start small. Hold the breath. Tell the truth. Keep the heart open, do the useful thing. When enough of us do that in the same generation, you'll see why the next chapter isn't a date on a calendar. It's a light appearing in many faces at once. We were taught to watch the horizon as if a date would save us, calendars circled, eyes skyward, hearts on hold. But if the method is real, presence, truth, love, service, why would its fulfillment be a single spectacle instead of a steady rising? Presented as an event, the second coming is easy to market. Experienced as emergence, it is hard to control. Thoth's through-line points to the latter. Not one spotlight, many lamps. Not a trumpet at noon, 1,000 rooms getting quietly brighter. Think of it as a current, not a character. The same consciousness one man demonstrated becomes available to any life trained to carry it. It does not arrive with fireworks. It arrives like competence, slow, repeatable, suddenly obvious in hindsight. You recognize it by its fruit, not by its branding. Rooms calm around it. Children relax near it. Truth gets told without theater. Power returns to service without needing a camera. When the current moves through a person, they stop performing goodness and start doing good. Across centuries, the current has borrowed many names and faces. Monks who rebuilt towns stone by stone after wars. Midwives who kept entire villages alive with courage and quiet hands. Reformers who refused to hate their enemies while refusing to bow to them. Poets who smuggled freedom past censors with beauty. Scientists who used clarity as devotion. Street corner saints who own nothing but always have bread. Different uniforms, same signature. Humility, coherence, unshowy love, and a truth that refuses to humiliate. If you stop waiting for sky drama, you can see the return already in progress. It looks like people practicing the method in inconvenient moments. It looks like honesty that costs something. Boundaries that do not poison the well. Generosity that does not need to be seen. Courage that admits fear and moves anyway. It looks like someone refusing to pass along the bitterness they inherited. It looks like a workplace becoming fairer and kinder because one person decided to be the first to tell the truth cleanly. Institutions that grew around a single spectacle taught us to scan the sky. A path that grows inside a human teaches us to scan our diary. Where will you be at 7 a.m.? Who will you meet at noon? What is the conversation you have been postponing because it will reveal you? The state you carry into those hours matters more to the second coming than your opinions about prophecy. Expectation will not make you ready. Training will. How do you recognize the current and avoid counterfeits that market charisma as holiness? Go by heat and clarity, not volume. The current leaves people more lucid, not more hypnotized, more capable, not more dependent, more tender and more brave at the same time. It welcomes questions because it has nothing to sell. It honors limits because it is not trying to win. It does not confuse rebellion with wisdom or conformity with peace. It knows that forgiveness and accountability are not opposites. It lives close to service and far from spectacle. Collectively, emergence looks like pockets of sanity linking up. Two households on a street where mornings start with quiet instead of noise. A team that trades blame for candor. A classroom that practices attention like a sport until the shy kid finally speaks and the room listens. A small business that pays fairly because it can, not because it must. A city block that starts greeting its elders by name. These do not trend, they accumulate. They change air quality. Every time coherence appears, it creates a little more permission for the next person to show up steady. The prophecy many were waiting for sounds less like a schedule and more like a threshold. Enough of us carrying enough steadiness for long enough that the default setting of a culture tilts. The second coming in this telling is not an interruption of history. It is history maturing past the need for spectacle to believe in love. It is the moment a critical mass stops outsourcing holiness and begins to host it. It is not loud, it is decisive. So stop staring at the sky for a rescue helicopter and check your hands. Are they steadier this month than last? Is your speech cleaner? Is your love less theatrical and more durable? Are you any more useful to the person standing right in front of you? If the answer is a little, that is the return. If the answer is not yet, that is the assignment. Either way, the horizon you were taught to watch is closer than you think. It is as near as your next breath, your next sentence, your next small act of service. If the second coming is a state showing up in many rather than a date carried by one, then the old resistance makes sense. Structures built on spectators need an audience. A culture of apprentices needs practice. In the next chapter, we will name why this emergence is resisted and how to stay unmoved, reverent without dependency, courageous without aggression, while you carry the current through an ordinary day. Power never surrenders its audience willingly. If the second coming is many lamps rather than one spotlight, ticket sales fall, middlemen lose their pulpits, and the crowd goes home to practice. That is why emergence meets resistance. Not because love is controversial, but because lived agency ruins certain business models. Institutions built on spectatorship survive by doing what institutions do best: dilute, distract, delegitimize, and domesticate. Dilution looks pious. Keep the words, remove the voltage, replace inner work with choreography. Swap presence for pageantry, longer services, tighter scripts, louder music, thinner silence. Teach forgiveness without confession, generosity without anonymity, prayer without stillness. The result is busy hearts with no bandwidth. Distraction looks devout. Flood the room with secondary fights, doctrinal knife edges, prophecy spreadsheets, culture war outrage. When people argue about timelines and tribal badges, no one notices they stop training. A community can spend 10 years winning debates and lose the one thing that mattered: coherence. Delegitimization looks protective. Stamp the living path as heresy, or smear it as cultish, or reduce it to mental illness. A steady life that harms no one is recast as dangerous because it models independence. When honest questions rise, authorities reach for labels to stop the conversation before fruit can be tasted. Domestication looks reasonable. Approve the language so long as the outcomes stay tame. Keep the candles, lose the fire. Build committees to supervise conscience. Create tiers, titles, and tests that make the priesthood indispensable. Sell pilgrimages, brand prayer, monetize awe. A public will pay for the feeling of nearness if you convince them access is scarce. And the resistance isn't only external. Families worry you'll change. Friends feel judged when you stop performing. Part of you wants approval more than truth. Another part wants certainty so badly it clings to the loudest teacher. The old self bargains, let's look holy without doing the work. If you expect only enemies, you'll miss the sabotage at home. So how do you stand unmoved, reverent without dependency, courageous without aggression? Start by getting small enough to be steady. Anchor in daily practice that no one can take from you. Breath before screens, truth before comfort, love before defense, service before applause. The person with a morning ritual is hard to capture. They already belong to something larger than the room. Hold reverence without outsourcing authority. Honor the beauty you received. Scripture, sacraments, elders, while refusing to hand them your spine. Bow to the altar, not to the brand. If a tradition leads you to practice, great. If a leader asks you to stop asking clean questions, leave kindly and keep walking. Use better tests. Don't go by volume, novelty, or charisma. Go by fruit. Does this teaching leave people more lucid or more hypnotized? More capable or more dependent? Softer and braver at once, or brittle and loud? If it shrinks your world to an in-group and an enemy, it is not the current. It is a costume. Guard your speech. A clean no today is holier than a dirty yes that breeds resentment. Refuse gossip raids. When malice comes dressed as concern, name it gently and decline the invitation. Don't try to fix people by performing for them. Let your life be boringly consistent. Pay your bills, keep your promises, apologize quickly, forgive before the bruise hardens. Consistency beats theater. Refuse the binaries that keep you spendable. You don't have to choose rebellion or obedience when the third path is responsibility. Quietly become useful. Build the small circle that meets weekly without cameras. Feed the elder who no algorithm knows. Spend like a vote. Fund sincerity, not spectacle. Competence, not charisma. Expect pushback and plan for weather. When you are misread or mocked, pause. One breath. Ask 3 questions. Is it true? Is it mine? Is it useful? If yes, change. If no, Release. Keep records of your own integrity, private agreements you won't break when you're tired. Don't lie to look kind. Don't hate to look strong. Don't trade presence for performance. Mind the three temptations: power, approval, certainty. Counter them with hidden service, shared discernment, and curiosity. Do one helpful thing no one will ever trace. Make big choices in the daylight of community. Replace "I'm sure" with "I'm listening" until reality confirms itself. Stay legal where you can. Martyrdom is not a hobby. Pay taxes, obey basic laws, protect the vulnerable. If you must disobey, do it cleanly, with open hands and open reasons, ready to accept the cost without poisoning your heart. Most of all, remember the goal isn't winning, it's transmitting. The current doesn't need your outrage, it needs your coherence. You are not here to defeat an institution, you are here to stop outsourcing your soul. When enough people do that quietly, rooms change, then streets, then decades. You don't need permission to live like this. You need a diary and a spine. If part of the world insists on spectacle, become the counterexample, practical, kind, unhurried, unbribable. Let them have the stage. You keep the work. Because the moment you stop trying to look holy and start doing the useful thing, resistance loses its favorite handle, you. And once you're no longer grabbable, you're finally ready for a field manual you can live tomorrow morning. You don't need a new identity to live this. You need a day you can actually keep. Keep it humble enough to repeat when you're tired, and sacred enough that skipping it feels like leaving a friend at a station. The field manual begins where all real revolutions begin, in the next 15 minutes. Wake before your first screen. Sit somewhere ordinary. 3 breaths to arrive, longer on the exhale than the inhale, as if you're pouring the night out of a jar. Name the day out loud in one clean sentence. What you will do and what you will refuse to trade away to look impressive. Let the sentence be small enough to keep. When your mind runs, meet it with a smile and a return. The point is not peace. The point is training. You are teaching your attention that you choose the subject. Carry that attention into your first contact with another human. Put the phone in a drawer. Look at a face until it stops being a role. Ask a plain question and wait long enough to hear the unscripted answer. Truth practiced here is not a speech. It is the end of pretending. I was short with you yesterday. I can't say yes to this and stay honest. I don't know what I need, but I know it isn't more noise. Your mouth will shake the first few times. Good. You are taking the muzzle off your soul. Train love in the small frictions you use to outsource to complaint. Let someone merge. Say thank you with your full face. Be exact with your yes and exact with your no so the people you love can stop guessing. When an old bruise is prodded, breathe twice before you answer. Remember that most rudeness is despair wearing armor. Remember that compassion without boundaries is theater. Boundaries without compassion are punishment. Keep both. Put service on the floor where your feet will trip over it. Choose a task that benefits others but earns you nothing public. Wash the mugs. Check on the elder. Fix the thing that squeaks. Give the money quietly. Send the apology without the essay. Service isn't sainthood, it's maintenance. Rooms stay breathable because someone opens a window before the air goes stale. When you catch yourself wondering who noticed, you just noticed the next bit to clean. Don't do this alone if you can help it. Gather 2 or 3 people who want to practice being useful more than being impressive. Meet once a week for an hour with phones out of sight. Begin with silence. End with one promise each that can be measured next time. No theology debates. No performance. No expert chair. Ask 4 questions and answer them simply. What did you practice? Where did you fall? What changed because you tried? What is your next small vow? Write the answers down. Accountability is kind when it is honest, local, and small enough to keep. Give yourself 14 days to feel the gears engage. On day 1, you'll feel earnest. On day 3, you'll feel silly. On day 5, you'll want to negotiate. Make 2 check-ins non-optional. A tiny review at day 5 to notice what actually happened to your mornings and your mouth. Another at day 12 to confirm what held under pressure and what collapsed when you were hungry and late. Adjust without drama. This is craft. A single degree of course correction over 14 days moves a coastline. Eat like someone who wants to keep their light on. Choose food that leaves you clear. Drink water as if your nervous system is worth hydrating. Move your body in a way you can sustain. A walk that becomes a ritual of witness. A stretch that reminds your ribs they were made to expand. Sleep like a person who intends to tell the truth tomorrow. Rest is not a luxury. It is what your courage stands on when the day gets loud. Protect the doorway into your mind. Curate inputs the way a temple guardian curates what crosses a threshold. Mute the feeds that weaponize your attention. Replace one scroll with one page that strengthens your spine. When an advertisement tries to hire your fear or your vanity, name the pitch and decline the job. Spend like a vote. Point your money at sincerity, competence, and care. If an institution asks for worship, give it respect and questions. If a teacher asks for your mind, give them your practice notes, not your sovereignty. Tell one person what you are doing and let them watch you do it, not to impress them, to remove the secret exit. When you fail, say so quickly and fix what can be fixed. When you succeed, do not make a flag out of it. Quiet wins are glue. Public victories have their place, but they don't hold families together at 10 p.m. on a Thursday when everyone is tired and someone needs to be the first to be kind. Here is a small story to hold in your pocket. A man raised his voice less this week. He noticed the heat in his face, put the kettle on, and returned to say, "I heard you. I just didn't like what I heard." No one clapped. A boy slept without nightmares that night. The house learned a new habit. No miracle report will ever trend from this, but if you collect enough of these, a neighborhood heals. If you feel the old hunger for spectacle rise, if you start auditioning for holiness, go back to the floor. Sweep something. Call your mother. Write the letter that will stop a small resentment from becoming a generational heirloom. Put your hand on your own chest and ask, "Am I available to what is in front of me?" If the answer is no, sit until it becomes yes. Then stand and do the next modest thing beautifully. This is a manual, not a maze. If you do these ordinary things in an ordinary week, you will become less dramatic and more dependable. Rooms will settle a little when you enter. People will tell you the truth sooner. You will catch yourself forgiving faster than your pride planned. And without any fireworks at all, you will discover why the last chapter cannot be about applause. It has to be about meaning, the vow you will keep when no one is looking, and the kind of life that vow quietly builds. Purpose isn't a title, it's a vow you keep when no one is watching. If the last 9 parts were the blueprint, this is the signing. Forget the costume of destiny, the perfect job title, the public mission, the viral proof. Purpose is smaller and braver, the line you refuse to cross when it would be easier. The good you will do even when it is boring. The love you will protect when pride is begging for a win. Take Jesus off the unreachable pedestal and the question returns to your diary. What will you keep when it costs you comfort, and who will you become by keeping it? You are handed a basket of shoulds. Be successful this way, holy that way, visible at all times. Put them down. The life you want will not arrive by compliance with someone else's script. It will arrive by coherence with your own soul. Purpose is not what you daydream about. It is what you are still doing after the feelings fade. Seen from a distance, it reads like a pattern. You told the truth when it cost. You stayed kind without becoming a doormat. You chose to serve without turning service into a stage. The edges of your life stop fraying because the thread running through it is the same in light and in dark. Stop outsourcing holiness to moments with cameras. The altar is your kitchen sink, your inbox, your commute, your threshold at 7:12 p.m. when the house is tired and you choose not to escalate a small storm. Measure your life in untrendy metrics. Hours of attentiveness, conversations finished well, apologies not delayed, promises kept without theater. When someone shakes the table, feel the surge, breathe twice, tell the truth cleanly, and do the useful thing next. No applause, no caption, just a room that breathes easier because you refuse to make it worse. Notice how purpose simplifies. Decisions get lighter because your vow answers for you. Does this make me more coherent? If yes, proceed. Does this make me more theatrical? Step back. Don't demonize ambition, aim it. Let craft replace hustle, let service replace branding, let peace replace performance anxiety. Your work will gain weight without gaining volume. People will ask different questions around you because the air is safer. This isn't magic, it's the maths of trust. Let the vow be specific enough to change you and generous enough to last. I tell the truth kindly, especially when I'm scared. I practice a quiet hour every morning before anyone can rent my mind. I make amends at once. I give more than I explain. I refuse to turn people into enemies. When you fail, and you will, shorten the time between mistake and repair. The distance between those 2 points is the length of your wisdom. Keep shrinking it. Purpose widens when it's shared. Invite 2 others into your vow, not to police you, but to witness you. Meet weekly, phones away, start with silence, and end with the sentence you'll keep until next time. Teach a child how to breathe through a feeling. Teach a friend how to apologize without theater. Teach a colleague how to set a boundary, without contempt. This is how purpose travels. By skill, not slogan. In a year, you will look back and realize you did not become impressive. You became dependable. Entire rooms will relax because someone went first. You will be tempted, as everyone is, to turn purpose back into a performance. Resist. You don't owe the internet your vow. You owe your vow your attention. Protect it from comparison, from trend chasing, from the itch to look special. Holy things thrive in unmarketable conditions. Keep them there. You are not hiding. You are heating the room for when someone arrives cold. Legacy is not a statue, it's a temperature. When you leave a place, does it breathe easier? When you speak, does the room get clearer? When you're gone for a week, do the habits you've planted keep feeding people? That is the scoreboard now. On your last day, no one will quote your follower count, but someone will say, "She told the truth and stayed kind," or "We made rooms calm." This is not small. This is civilization work. Don't miss what we can't publish publicly. Our free newsletter carries the uncut transmissions, the lineage notes, and the practices we share only inside the circle. Use the link in the description to enter your email. And for a limited time, you'll also receive our book in ebook form at no cost when you sign up. Not a reward, just how we keep the real work in one protected place. Make one vow you will not break this month and put it where you will trip over it. A mirror, fridge, lock screen, and keep it until the keeping becomes who you are. If you feel this on a deep level, comment, "I get the code."